Coco Gauff breaking her tennis racket leads to Iga Swiatek's blunt animals question. What began as a broken racket quickly turned into a debate about where the line should be drawn between access and intrusion, with players now filmed across practice courts, tunnels and backstage areas. The spotlight no longer switches off when matches end. Gauff's reaction after her elimination became the latest example to raise questions about whether that constant exposure has gone too far. Swiatek was asked directly about the balance between entertainment and player privacy, and her answer did not hold back. Iga Swiatek's blunt response after Coco Gauff racket incident. Responding to the question, Swiatek drew a sharp comparison while discussing how often players are observed away from the court. The question is, are we tennis players? Or are we animals in the zoo? Where they are observed even when they're pooping? Okay, that was exaggerating obviously, but it would be nice to have some privacy. It would be nice also to have your own process, and not always be observed. For example, in other sports, you have some technical things you want to do. It would be nice to have some space you can do that without the whole world watching. At Wimbledon, there are courts where people with accreditation can get there, but it's without the fans, she boldly stated. Gauff had broken her racket in frustration after being knocked out of the Australian Open, a moment that was quickly circulated online. While the reaction itself was not unusual, the speed with which it became content reignited debate about how much of a player's emotional processing should be public. Why Iga Swiatek believes players deserve more privacy. Swiatek expanded on her point by stressing that being constantly filmed away from competition is not part of a player's job. There are some tournaments where it's impossible and you're constantly observed. I don't think it should be like that because we are tennis players. Swiatek continued. She concluded, we're meant to be watched on court and in the press. That's our job. It's not our job to be a meme when you forget your accreditation. It's funny for sure. People have something to talk about. For us, I don't think it's necessary. Her comment struck a chord, particularly in an era where behind-the-scenes access is increasingly used to drive engagement. While fans enjoy the added intimacy, Swiatek's stance highlights the toll of never having space to decompress. In the wake of Gauff's racket moment, Swiatek's words reframed the discussion, shifting focus from a single incident to a broader question about respect, boundaries, and what players sign up for when they step on tour. Tennis is often described as a gentleman's, or gentlewoman's, game, a sport of quiet manners and louder intentions. White lines, white noise, and the thwack of a ball slicing the air like punctuation. But every so often, the veneer cracks. Sometimes, so does a racket. It happened in a moment that felt smaller than it became. Coco Gauff, coiled with expectation and frustration, lost a point that mattered. Maybe it was the net cord's betrayal. Maybe it was the echo of a missed opportunity. What mattered was the release. Her racket met the court in a sharp, unambiguous snap. Carbon fiber splintered. The crowd inhaled. Tennis etiquette gasped. And then came Iga Swiatek's question. Not shouted. Not sanctimonious. Just blunt, almost curious, delivered with the dry clarity of someone who sees the world as it is, not as it's packaged for highlight reels. Are we animals? She asked. The words landed harder than the racket ever could. In that instant, the match became a mirror. The question wasn't about Coco, not really. It was about all of them, about the thin membrane separating discipline from instinct, composure from combustion. Tennis demands monk-like focus while inviting gladiatorial pressure. It asks players to feel everything and show almost nothing. Coco Gauff has grown up under that contradiction. A prodigy molded in public, she's been praised for her poise since she was barely old enough to drive. But poise, like youth, is not a permanent state, it's a practice. And sometimes, practice breaks. The snapped racket was not a tantrum so much as a punctuation mark. A period at the end of a sentence she'd been carrying for games, maybe sets. Athletes are taught to channel emotion, as if emotion were electricity and the body a circuit. But circuits overload. Sparks fly. Things burn. Swiatek's question cut through the smoke. Are we animals? It wasn't an accusation, It was a boundary. A reminder that tennis is not only a test of forehands and footwork, but of restraint. That there's a difference between ferocity and frenzy. Yet the beauty of the moment lies in its honesty. Tennis doesn't often allow for it. Players are fined for audible frustration, coached to keep faces neutral, trained to swallow the very impulses that make competition human. When someone breaks a racket, the sport pretends to scold, but secretly understands. The rulebook says no. The heart says, I get it. Coco, for her part, has never shied away from accountability. The racket breaking wasn't celebrated, it was acknowledged. Growth in elite sport doesn't come from pretending mistakes don't happen, it comes from recognizing them, then deciding who you want to be next. Swiatek, too, has carved her reputation on control. Her game is built on margins, of angle, of patience, of psychology. Her question reflected that philosophy. It asked for intention. It asked for choice. It suggested that excellence is not the absence of emotion, but the governance of it. And so the exchange lingered, far beyond the changeover. Fans debated it online, as they always do, some defending Coco's fire, others applauding Iga's candor. But the real conversation lived elsewhere, in locker rooms and late-night reflections, in the quiet moments when athletes replay not the point they lost, but the reaction that followed. Tennis is changing. The new generation is louder, freer, less willing to fold themselves into the sport's old silhouettes. They celebrate with roars, mourn with tears, question with words that don't fit neatly on a scoreboard. The racket-breaking moment, and the question it provoked, felt like a crossroads between eras. Are we animals? No. But neither are we machines. We are competitors under lights bright enough to bleach the edges of restraint. We are humans balancing legacy and immediacy, expectation and impulse. Sometimes we break things. Sometimes we ask better questions afterward. In the end, the snapped racket was swept away. The match moved on. Points were played. But the moment stayed, etched not in carbon fiber, but in conversation. Because tennis, for all its lines and rules, is still played by people. And people, even the very best of them, are still learning where passion ends and purpose begins.